Hello everybody, welcome to Wellness. I've got Dr. Anthony Pasek here. I'm Dr. Olivia Joseph. We are the doctors on the functional medicine team here at the Wellness Connection. So very nice to meet you if we haven't had a chance to. Otherwise, if you're a familiar face, hi, we hope you're doing well and staying healthy. So last week we were talking about allergies and allergy season. So if you did not watch that one, watch it, because these two videos are gonna piggyback off each other. Because you can't talk about allergies without talking about the immune system.
Right.
And you can't talk about the immune system without covering a lot of things that overlap with allergies and inflammation. So that's gonna be our emphasis today. So we're going into cold and flu season, we're in back to school season, we're getting into low vitamin D season, high stress season, holiday season, all of the above. And all of these are things that impact our immune system and immune function.
Big time.
So we want to kind of let you know what makes you vulnerable. What are some of your blind spots? What are some things to do and not to do, but also supplements that really, really help, especially the earlier you take them or preventively if you take them. So let's go ahead and talk about just immune health. I already know what you're gonna say. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of immune health?
Oh, well, you think I'm gonna say the gut.
I know. No.
My biggest thing I'm thinking of now is like stress and sleep. Just in my life right now, you can hear it in me. Everybody's experienced this. If you are doing everything right and you're great, everyone around you can get sick, and then you're like, I'm fine, I'm coasting right through it. But if you stay up too late, or if you're worried about something, if you have some event in your life or some bad news from a relative, it's like, holy cow, then suddenly you just feel like, I just don't quite have it, and then you can just get sick at the drop of a hat.
Right.
So yeah, your gut's very important, but for me right now, it's like, okay, if you feel like your armor is down, double down on those fundamentals.
Sure, I agree. So what happens when we're super stressed and we're tired and we're not getting enough sleep? What do? Do we make good choices?
Not usually.
Usually we're making more poor choices that snowball into impacting more stress, gut health, immune health, all of the above. And Dr. Anthony and I can relate. We both have babies, right?
Yeah.
I have 4 kids. He has 2. We all have stress, right? And sometimes that stress does impact our sleep, whether you have a 2-year-old or not. So it's really important. Let's just cover some lifestyle things, sleep-wise. So when you talk about stress and sleep, what are healthy ways to manage stress and keep your sleep healthy, even though your wheels are turning?
Sure. Well, you might need to take something to help both areas, sleep and stress. The first thing I think of is magnesium.
Me too.
Something like that.
That's
that
my favorite.
To kind of get you out of that fight or flight sympathetic mode of being anxious and worked up, which is going to impact your sleep adversely and is going to really impact your immune system's ability to fight off anything that you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
So magnesium can help get you to sleep. A good formula that has some other nutrients in there can help calm you down, not in a sedating way, but just get you to the point where your relaxation side of your immune system can take over. That's really when healing and repair are going to take the front of the front seat for importance. When it comes to stress management, that's a tough one. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking with patients about that because it's either something you make a priority or you don't, and it's something you have to do every single day.
It is.
Take that with what you need, because for some people it's beating up a punching bag, and then for other people it's listening to a stand-up comedian. It might be completely different for a different person.
I think the one that I would say it is a one-size-fits-all approach is focusing on breathing. And when you think about exercise or meditation, that's really what it's designed to do. And those things can profoundly impact your immune system.
I agree.
So studies have shown as little as 4 minutes. So if you're like, I can't turn my brain off, I don't know how to meditate, I don't have time, as little as 4 minutes of meditation starts to change your physiology. Our focus is going to be more lifestyle and nutrition based. One thing I would say, avoid not sleeping, right? Like sedating or binging with things that will keep you up late at night, too much TV, cut into your sleep time. But sugar is one of those things that we tend to crave, sugar or caffeine, when we're under stress. Sugar can feed inflammation, feed infection, mucus production, and caffeine is going to impact your ability to heal, sleep, and repair. So I did think you were going to say gut, but that was a great foundation. So what I want to talk about are some things that make you vulnerable to what makes you more likely to get sick during cold and flu and COVID and under stress season. So what are some things? Sleep, right. Sugar, anything else that you think of? Let's think of things like nutritionally or what we see on labs metabolically that makes somebody more vulnerable.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is vitamin D.
1000%.
So if you're coming into this season with a low tank of vitamin D, you really are at a major disadvantage. You won't have the ability to fight anything off when the time is there. You can't bring your levels up overnight.
I agree.
It doesn't work that way.
So one thing I think that people think is just because you were outside a lot in the summer that you're going into fall with really healthy vitamin D levels.
I hear that every day.
That's not true. No. That is not true. Because many people have vitamin D receptor mutations. They don't make vitamin D efficiently, or they have high levels of inflammation. When I see a high C-reactive protein and autoimmune disease leading to high inflammation, you see low vitamin D, and you cannot get that vitamin D up until you bring that inflammation down. It's just, it's what we see metabolically, clinically every single day. So just because you were out all summer does not mean your levels are great. That's why we check them. We love to, and what's the sweet spot numbers wise that you like to see vitamin D?
50 to 60.
I was just gonna say 55. So we are on the same page.
And another point on that, there's no right amount for everybody to take. Some people say, I was told I should take 10,000 every day. I've seen more and more people, I don't know if this is good or bad, I've seen more and more people with levels above 100 recently because they've been taking 10,000 every day for months and months and months. Right. So there's no perfect amount for everybody. You have to know what your numbers are. You might need a lot. You might not need very much at all. So
agreed.
You have to test your
levels. I wouldn't recommend taking 10,000 units regularly unless you're regularly testing your levels. So we change it for the person based on their levels, based on the season, based on whatever else they have going on. High levels of inflammation, autoimmunity. So vitamin D is definitely going to make you more vulnerable. I think diet-wise, eating a large amount of mucus-producing foods, which are going to be gluten, dairy, sugar, soy, they make you produce more mucus, and if you don't drain properly, that's a breeding grounds for an infection because you're creating a sticky environment for those bad bugs to get stuck to, and the longer they're stuck, the more secondary infections show up. So for example, when people have sinus infections, they can snowball into ear infections. If you have a cold, it could snowball into an ear infection.
Or into your lungs.
Or into your lungs, exactly. Bronchitis, pneumonia. So these are secondary infections that develop because things aren't draining properly and your immune system's not fighting them off properly. So vitamin D is a vulnerability. Anything else that you think of that we didn't?
I mean, your fundamentals were right on point. You want to be eating the basics of a good, healthy diet to start with before it's too late.
And keeping the gut healthy. There are actually immune-boosting probiotics. All probiotics, prebiotics, fermented foods are good for immune health, but there are specific immune-boosting probiotics that have shown clinically when you use them for 90 days, a 3-month window of time during cold and flu season, you are far less likely to get cold, flu, respiratory infections. It's statistically higher, its effectiveness, than a flu shot, just so you know. Just putting that out there. So I want to talk about some cool ingredients that came across my desk and kind of the research behind them. And then we're going to talk about some of the ones that are just the most common immune boosting ones that you've all heard of, that we all know, like vitamin C, zinc. We covered some quercetin last week. This week we're going to cover some new stuff, okay? So the first thing, I got this pulmonary research on certain nutrients that improve pulmonary and respiratory function randomly on my desk after we said we were going to talk about immune health. So one thing is cordyceps. So cordyceps, if you guys don't know what those are, they're mushrooms, right? So we know mushrooms have great antiviral properties. Many respiratory diseases, including asthma, COPD, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and cystic fibrosis, involve pulmonary inflammation. So cordyceps can actually reduce the pulmonary inflammation, lowering markers like tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 8, NF-kappa B, COX-2, and INOS expression. What is that in English? They're all markers of inflammation, tends to cause a lot of inflammation in the lungs. So cordyceps benefit inflammatory lung diseases. So there's a significant amount of research showing this, and it's traditional Chinese medicine uses these mushrooms all the time. I'm going to let you touch on NAC because it's like your favorite.
Yeah.
Well, glutathione is, if
right.
not NAC.
NAC is N-acetylcysteine, and it helps with, as an antioxidant, helping to reduce free radical levels in the lungs in particular, which is pretty fascinating how that works. It, similar to the cordyceps, it helps to reduce inflammation, and in particular, in asthma, there's a pretty big body of research there. Yep. And this was news to me in COVID times about asthma and things like that coming on board with using NAC and glutathione. So NAC is a precursor to glutathione.
Yeah, we talked about that last week because it goes hand in hand, not just with immune function. Yeah. It's in all the anti-COVID supplements, but right. it's all, we use NAC for detoxification purposes, right. antioxidant purposes, but also in people with allergies.
And then interestingly, it also helps to thin that mucus.
The mucus secretions. That I didn't know about until I read this research paper, that NAC is a mucolytic agent, right. thinning mucus secretions, which will reduce the likelihood of you developing a secondary infection, and it should lower the time frame of your illness, which is pretty important when you talk about things like flu, because if you can lower the time frame that you have the flu, you're less likely to go into pneumonia, right. which is where we really start to see issues with the flu. And
then specific studies looked at small airway function, the tiniest little pieces
little
of
bronchioles.
Your lungs, the bronchioles, helping improve that with NAC.
So last week we briefly talked about bromelain. I'm going to cover this category all at once. I'm going to talk about bromelain, boswellia, and ginger in one foul swoop because their function is very similar. Bromelain is a potent anti-inflammatory for COX-2, INOS, and NF-kappa B. It also helps with T cells, which is your first line of defense. So we've seen people who've gotten COVID who never developed COVID antibodies. And people are like, how's that possible? Do I not have immunity? Some people have a really strong T immune function. So what that means is their T cells went in and fought the infection, and then they never had to have antibodies to fight that infection. So they had COVID, they have memory from that viral infection, but they don't have antibodies. So it's kind of a phenomenon that we've seen here. So what bromelain does is it helps limit airway inflammation and reduce histological damage to lung tissue, which is really important in people who get chronic bronchitis, infections of that regard. But even when you're talking about COVID, that's one of the things you want to prevent. So boswellia, which is known as frankincense, one of my favorite, it's an Ayurvedic plant, and it helps reduce airway inflammation. So it's used for anti-inflammatory purposes. You'll even see it in products that are for neuropathy or nerve pain. So we know that it's a good anti-inflammatory for nerve pain. And when you think about it, when you're sick, those aches, those pains, sometimes when you cough and you're like, oh, it hurts to cough, like it brings me to my knees. That's where these type of formulas can be a really nice tool to have in your pocket. And of course, ginger, I saw the studies how it inhibits COX-1 and COX-2, which are inflammatory markers, way back when, and it was tested in a study for osteoarthritis after Vioxx got recalled by the FDA. So Vioxx was an arthritis drug, it got recalled, so they did a study on the effectiveness of ginger for arthritis, and it was remarkably effective, but it's very good for immune function as well. It's just good for immune cell activation.
But you can't patent ginger.
Can't patent ginger, no. So what are some of the other nutrients that you think of building immune function?
Sure. That
are the obvious, like, foundational ones?
Yeah, the two other ones that are in almost every formula that you'll see and have gotten a lot of press lately are vitamin C and zinc. And I was sitting here thinking about preparing for this. I don't necessarily know how those things work on your immune system and how they do their job. So vitamin C is an antioxidant. Right.
So when we talk about things like N-acetylcysteine and glutathione, it's that same pathway. Vitamin C boosts the immune system, but only for like 4 to 5 hours. So it's one of those supplements where if you're sick, you want to take it every 4 to 5 hours. Yeah. If you're a nurse, if you're an emergency room doctor, infectious disease doctor, you want to be taking it every 4 to 5 hours. If you're a teacher, you want to be taking it every 4 to 5 hours that you're around those little monkey hosts, as I like to call them. They like to get everybody sick. So It's important, and you can take vitamin C up to GI tolerance, and that's different in everybody. I saw a patient today, she said she could do 3,000 milligrams before she gets a loose stool or diarrhea. Right. I've seen with the right forms of vitamin C, some people have been able to go to 10,000 milligrams. Right. I'm not saying you do that much. Usually we refer out for an IV if somebody needs 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C. So vitamin C, and the other one is zinc.
And I know zinc is an antiviral. That's one way that is very helpful. So, I use a lot of zinc spray or just take zinc lozenges and things like that when I'm dealing with those type of symptoms. But it is an immune support nutrient.
Preventively and also in acute situations. Right. So that vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc, these are things you could take preventively and then bump them up in an acute situation. The one thing I will say with zinc and why it got a lot of press around COVID time is because one of the symptoms of zinc deficiency is losing your sense of smell, right? Smell and taste sometimes. I will say this, you're probably getting too much zinc. In some people, when they take too high of doses, they say it upsets their stomach. It absolutely can and will. Recommend you take zinc with food. But the other thing is some people start to taste metal. Right. There's actually a test called the zinc tolerance test where you take zinc, you take it, and you keep going until you have this metallic taste in your mouth. If you start to taste metal, you're probably getting too much zinc and you might want to pull back. Anything else you want to add to that?
Not for those.
Okay, natural things that boost immune function: sleep, exercise, sunlight, adjustments, things like acupuncture, keeping your inflammation low, through diet, through natural things that we've talked about today. So these are all ways you can stay healthy, and it doesn't mean you won't get sick. That's not what this is designed to do, because getting sick is part of building your immune system. Yeah. It's so that anything that happens infection-wise is mild, infrequent, meaning it doesn't happen all the time. Right. You build up immunity and you're covered for years and years and years, which is more than can be said with a lot of conventional things out there. So we want to work on your own natural immune system, and we will be back next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about next week. We'll figure it out. So we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.